Hi, I'm Tim Detour, and this is Clover. Today we're going to have some fungi fun in the Corvallis Woods.
This is Clover saying we're at the Siluslaw National Forest.
Thank you, Clover. So stay tuned as we learn about fungi.
First stop is we're gonna have our main focus be on mushrooms. So we're gonna be hiking down this trail. Can you see this weird, strange orange ectoplasm looking thing on this log? Here, I'm gonna pass these around. So you just take it, pass it around. And look at these weird orange globs. Has anyone ever heard of witch's butter before?
Nope.
Yeah, so witch's butter is actually a mushroom. This is a fungus. It's what we call ascomycota, which is one of our cup fungi. So ascomycota just means it makes its spores in these teeny little microscopic cups.
So edible?
Yeah, as far as I know, all the Tremella species I know in the Pacific Northwest at least
kind of nice
are all
texture.
edible. Prebiotic is what feeds the gut flora. Probiotic is what inoculates our body with healthy flora. Antibiotic kills what's in there, and Uncle Biotic is married to the antibiotic. So I couldn't help it.
That was good.
One other thing I'll mention, I usually don't recommend eating mushrooms raw because they usually have, I'll talk a little bit more if we have time on the structure mushrooms, but usually they're bound into chitin. The cell walls are bound in chitin, which is like a crab shell. So it makes it really hard for them to digest. And also they usually have things like hydrazines, which are kind of a little tough on the liver. So generally I don't recommend eating mushrooms raw, but in small amounts they can be fine. But in general, you want to cook all your mushrooms. My favorite thing to use with tremella is to thicken up soups and stews. So if you want a nice thick stew, like, I don't know, like in Louisiana, they put like okra and the jambalaya and stuff to help thicken it up. So if you want to take good mushroom pictures to be able to identify them later, it's good to find multiple specimens. So here we got some really young ones of this one, and we have really old ones. Another thing to do to help identify is to completely pull the mushroom out of the ground so you can see how it attaches to the ground. Because sometimes looking at the top, I can see how the stalk attaches. Because sometimes you'll see like something like they'll be like with something like a veil on there. Like sometimes if you see a veil on the stem, that could mean it's like an amanita, and so that could be the difference between poison and medicine right there. Because a lot of the, sometimes you might think like, oh, is this a matsutake? And then you miss like seeing that like white little veil, and you're like, oh, actually that's a death cap, you know. So good to like look all the way at the base of your mushroom. So here is we have some of our coral mushrooms. They're notoriously difficult to identify. So the main genuses you'll see is Ramaria or Clavulina. I think this is a Clavulina species. The coral mushrooms, they're hard to identify. You're not likely to poison yourself, but you may risk getting a little diarrhea or something like that. So in an emergency situation, it's kind of good to know that. But in general, I tend to not recommend people eating these unless you know exactly what species you're working with.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of different species of puffballs. I think that's a Gyastrum, if I'm not mistaken. So puffballs are really cool. So one thing you notice about the puffballs is if you touch the top of it, it's kind of like hollow on the inside. So the way the mushrooms, does anyone know how mushrooms reproduce by chance? Spores. So spores are basically like these little they're like, little one cell wall thick, and they like fly up into the air. They land in the ground, and if they sense that there might be other like spores or potential mycelium that they can mate with, which are like the vegetative structures of mushrooms, they'll kind of like start to grow like a little hyphal thread, which is like a single strand. It's like an 1/8 of the thickness of a human hair. So they'll send out this teeny tiny little thread through, and if they mate another spore that's their proper mating type with, or they find a mycelium, like a vegetative structure of the mushroom that they can mate with, then they'll start creating their own mushrooms. So a lot of different mushrooms, like here we have this mushroom here. And this one, it has its spore-bearing surface on the bottom, so the mushrooms kind of just fall out the bottom, and they kind of disperse through the air that way and follow air currents. The puffball, however, it has the spores on the inside, so you notice if you squeeze it, sometimes you'll see a little like cloud of spores come out. This one's a little bit old. The thing with these ones though is when you find the edible puffballs is you want to get them before they start producing spores. Like you should be able to cut down the middle of that mushroom and it's just solid white. If you cut this one open, for instance, you just see it's like kind of empty and it's open, it's just full of spores and stuff. You don't want to eat that. So it's like the really young, fresh puffballs. Like even some of the small ones you can eat when they get really young and fresh. Just slice them thin, fry them up in butter. They're delicious. It's like great one line. You know, there's like one long gill and like gills that kind of come in between. It's like really important to pay attention to that shape of the gills. It's very unique, kind of like almost netting. The way the gills kind of are more netted rather than just straight. It's got that little belly button right there, umbilicatum. So it's got the little belly button kind of thing going on with it. Tubiformis because it's like a tube. If I break this in half, let's see, can I see you guys through it? Not quite.
This one you might be able to.
Yeah.
This one's got a good, yeah, this one's probably kind
But
of.
this one is like, it's literally hollow in the center. So if you see it, it's like, you could drink your sody pop out of this little guy. So this is winter chanterelle. It is edible. It is really delicious. It is called a hedgehog mushroom. So hedgehogs, this is probably one of my favorite mushrooms. And so they call it the hedgehog. It's because if you look underneath, it's got spines. So it got spines for gills. So they call it the hedgehog because it's got spines for gills. Way good ways to tell this one out is that like really tan to whitish like buff cap. That color is really distinct combined with the spines underneath the gills. You find that you found some species of hedgehog and they're very delicious fried in butter and garlic, like with everything. So to breathe. If you wanted to get a long-term mushrooming bag, cool thing would be to do is like a mesh bag, a mesh cloth bag. At the bottom, it actually allows the spores to actually come out. So you can be walking through the woods, spreading spores throughout the forest like Johnny Apple mushroom. What do you notice about the area that we found these mushrooms growing in? What do you notice like that would, if you were going to look for these mushrooms again? So raise your hand if you have something you thought would be good. Yeah.
There's a lot of down trees.
A lot of down trees. So why might down trees be important?
Mushrooms are eaten.
Yeah, what'd you say?
Because they eat them.
Yeah, exactly. So these winter chanterelles, they actually eat dead and decaying wood. So that's what we call it. We call them saprophytes. Saprophytes means they're decomposers. Those are things that we ought to know is like, is this a mushroom that associates with the tree root? Then it's important to know what kind of tree does it associate with, how old does the tree have to be? Or is it a decomposer? What does it like to decompose? Mushroom, this is probably my favorite mushroom actually. And it's cool because we see different age stages of this mushroom. So we see them when they're just like teeny little white ping pong balls, and we see them as they start to develop this reddish orange like ring on them. And they're all growing up and down this log. So you can see them all up and down this log. Does anyone happen to know this mushroom? Polypораceae family. Poly means many, pore means pore. So polypore means rather than having gills, it has many pores underneath. So if you look on these mushrooms and you notice that it's just like this smooth surface with these teeny tiny little pores on there, you can tell it's a polypore.
Oh.
Detail. And this one here is called red-belted conch. So things I use this mushroom for, excellent in soups and stews. It can actually help to prevent spoiling soups and stews. That was one of the traditional ways they used to when you didn't have refrigeration. Boil some mushrooms in there and help to stop the soup from spoiling. You can use it to prevent infection. It's actually hemostatic. So that means it can actually staunch and stop bleeding. It helps to clot blood. So one thing that people would do is they'd have a little bit of the powder of the mushroom. You start bleeding heavily, you pack the wound with it. It's going to stop the bleeding. It's going to be super antimicrobial, and it's also anti-inflammatory. They're perennial, so some of these can grow to be quite large, and they can be many, many years old, even decades old. So understand when you harvest these, it's kind of like a big deal. You're taking an individual out of the population who could be older than you are. So don't be willy-nilly just like harvesting like these mushrooms as you go. We're going to kind of conclude things out here. So I want to thank you all so much for toughing it out till the end of the walk. I know not everyone's used to being out in the rain all day and stuff. So, you know, not everyone is able to make that. So I really appreciate it. You got my email through the thing, but I also have a website if you want to see any of my upcoming events. It's notaibotanica.com. Yeah, I'm just going to conclude things here. So thank you all so much. I'll hang out around for a few more minutes if you want to ask me any questions. Otherwise, you are welcome to go.
Well, that wraps up part 1 of having fungi tonight. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and let us know in the comments what you thought. So stay tuned for part 2. Sponsored by Fungi Frenzy Adventure Park, dude. Check out the Bewet Mushroom House. Take a trip through the mind-blowing psychedelic forest, the gnarly unicorn bouncy house. Fly high on the fungi flyer, zip over the treetops of this magical forest, dude. Hallucinate at the Fungi Frenzy Park.